शुक्लांबरधरं विष्णुं शशिवर्णं चतुर्भुजं प्रसन्नवदनं ध्यायेत् सर्वविघ्नोपशान्तये। गुरुर्ब्रह्मा गुरुर्विष्णुः गुरुर्देवो महेश्वरः गुरुः साक्षात् परब्रह्म तस्मै श्री गुरवे नमः। वञ्जनानन्दनं वीरं जानकी शोकनाशनं कपीशमक्षहन्तारं वन्दे लङ्काभयङ्करम्। कृष्णाय वासुदेवाय देवकी नन्दनाय च नन्दगोपकुमाराय गोविन्दाय नमो नमः। गोविन्दाय नमो नमः। Namaskaram. Welcome to the 39th session of Narayaneeyam, following the second 26 of Srimad Narayaneeyam by Bhattadri. As we saw in the last three sessions covering Dasakams 24 and 25, the young boy Prahlada was blessed by Bhagavan Narasimha with everything, including the great divine knowledge and the material prosperity and position as the uncontested chief of Daityas for several 100 million years, and finally to attain Sahyajyam at Prahlada's choosing and at the desired moment whenever he wanted to reach the Brahman. As part of the review of Srimad Bhagavatam, we noted that Prahlada was citing the example of Gajendra getting rescued at the appropriate time. Today, in the words of Narayana Bhattadri, we will be enjoying the same Gajendra Rakshanam and also the Moksham for the Gandarva who was cursed to become a villainous crocodile and did what he did to Gajendra by design. Both were devotees of the Lord Supreme in one way or the other, and thus the Lord Almighty could not selectively save one and leave the other in the lurch. That is the highlight of the second 26 and this session in particular. The salvation of Gajendra is unique in many respects among Bhagavan's Leela Vinoda. The famous king Indradyumna, a devotee, was turned into an elephant by a curse from sage Agastya. One day the elephant king, who was at sport with the elephants of his herd, was caught by a crocodile. A struggle ensues between them lasting 1,000 years, at the end of which the elephant recollects its earlier birth and earnestly prays to the Lord Supreme in his form without attributes. The Lord rushes, seated on his exalted mount or vehicle Garuda, and pulls Gajendra out of the lake by his trunk. Using his own hand, the elephant attains a Sarupya form of liberation. Although I have touched upon the 4 states of liberation earlier, since several questions have been raised from time to time, some of which I may have responded to then and there, it now seems to be a good time to recollect the various types of salvation in this session. Sarupya is explained in Vaishnavism as a liberation in which the bodily features of the devotee are exactly like those of the Paramatma, apart from 2 or 3 special ensigns or insignia found only on the body of Bhagavan the Supreme. The reference for this is from Sri Harinama Chintamani, also called Bhajana Ragasya, by Bhakti Vinoda Thakura of Gaudiya Sampradaya, who lived in the 19th century, to be exact 1838 to 1914. Sarupya, as per the Shiva Purana, the first canto, is one of the 5 types of salvation. Lord Shiva is quoted as saying, "Worshipping me in my supreme halic form at this place and performing the other sacred rites shall accord the 5 types of salvation, namely Salokya, Samipya, Sarupya, Sarshti, and Sayujya. May all of you achieve all your cherished desires. This is how the Sloka 9 of Shivapurana, Canto 1 explains. Sri Sarti state the opulence of the devotee is equal to the opulence of Supreme, as quoted in Shivapurana. Sarupya in the Saiva Siddhanta tradition refers to the third state of Bhakta, 3 out of 4, because only 4 states are explained in not only abstract but philosophical terms as well, but also in concrete and relational explanations. Thus, in Salokya, the relationship of devotee to deity is servile, that of a servant to master. In Samipya, it is filial, like that of a son to the father, and in Sarupya, fraternal, as between friends, and in Sayujya, somewhat amorous, as between lovers. The first 3 prepare the devotee for the final stage of Sayujya. The 4 classes of devotees are the states of spiritual life correspond to the 4 divisions of the Agamas and the 4 modes of sadhana, spiritual practice, that they entail. Thus, Salokya corresponds to Charya, ritual and moral conduct, Samipya to Kriya, architectural and iconographic making, Sarupya to Yoga, meditation, and Sayujya to Jnanapada, theology and gnosis, which is knowledge of spiritual mysteries. The uniqueness of Gajendra Rakshanam and Moksham should be carefully reviewed. This is the only instance in Bhagavatam where a devotee is found praising the Lord in his Nirguna Brahma Swarupam or the attributeless form. Similarly, it is one of the rare occasions where the Supreme physically holds the devotee by his own hand, rescues him and takes him to Vaikuntha Loka along with him. When the Lord Supreme appears in front of the devotee, even though the devotee beckoned him in the form of Brahman, Lord comes mounted on a vehicle with a Swarupam, and thereby he comes mounted on Garuda, his vehicle. Lastly, Bhagavan gives a benediction for the world's benefit that whoever sings in his praise, and also of Indradyumna by reciting this episode of Gajendra Rakshanam in the morning, is sure to attain liberation. Such is the loftiness of the Gajendra Moksham. The story emphasizes that there is nothing superior to remembering the Lord in times of danger or distress. The Lord will ward off all dangers and even will bestow deliverance from the cycle of births and deaths. Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 7, chapters 2, 3, and 4 cover this Gajendra episode. The first sloka of this Dashakam describes Gajendra's previous life, and let us listen to Narayana Bhattadiri's very first slokam of Dashakam 26. Indradyumna Pandya Kandadhirajaha Indradyumna Pandya Kandadhirajaha Tadbhaktatma Chandanadrau Kadachit Indradyumna Pandya Kandadhirajaha Tadbhaktatma Chandanadrau Kadachit Tvatsevayam Magnadhira Aluloke Tvatsevayam Magnadhira Aluloke Nayeva Agastyam Praptam Adityakamam Tvatsevayam Magnadhira Aluloke Nayeva Agastyam Praptam Adityakamam Indradyumnaha Pandya Khandati Rajaha. Tvat bhaktatma chandanadrav kadachit tvat sevayam magnadhir aluloke na eva agastyam praptam atitya kamam. Long ago, King Indradyumna ruled the Pandya kingdom. He was of pure mind and was a great devotee of Lord Vishnu. Once he was in deep meditation, worshipping Bhagavan in the valleys of Malaya mountain. When he was engrossed, sage Agastya came to Malaya perchance. Even though Indradyumna was in meditation only on Lord Supreme, but the sage did not understand, and in his haste concluded that due hospitality should have been extended to him by the king, who, however, did not even notice the arrival of the sage, since his mind was fully absorbed in Bhagavat Smaranam. Kumbhodbhutihi Sambruta Krodha Bharaha Kumbhodbhutihi Sambruta Krodha Bharaha Sabdatma Tvo Hasti Bhuyam Bhajeti Sabdatma Tum Hasti Bhuyam Bhajeti Chapva Atayenam Pratyagat Sobilebe Bhaktindatmo Vatsmruti Vyaktidhanyo Vatsmruti Vyaktidhanyo Kumbhodbhutihi Sambrita Krodhabharaha Stabdatmatvam Hasti Bhuyam Bhajeti Shaptva Atayenam Pratyagat Sopi Lebe Hastindratvam Tvat Smriti Vyakti Dhanyam. Sage Agastya, also known as the pot-born, Kumbhodbhavaha, the pot-born, got infuriated when the king did not show the respect that was due to his stature, even after waiting for some time. In reality, the king was in deep meditation, completely oblivious to the external world. But the sage, however, mistook this for the king's audacity and pride. In a sudden fit of rage, sage pronounced a curse on the king to become an elephant and went about his way. The king accordingly took the form of a majestic elephant. One may wonder, it was not the mistake of the king. How could the sage curse him? Unfortunately, powerful people like Agastya, when they curse, it has an effect. And the king may have had a karma to merit such a curse. Overall, this is why anger or rage is denounced in all scriptures in all forms. Because such rage affects the giver of the curse and also the receiver of the curse. Despite becoming an elephant by curse, Indradyumna was fortunate to be endowed with the gift of retaining his fond memory on Bhagavan. The honorable deeds done in the previous life as a king bore fruits at the appropriate time, that the elephant could distinctly remember the Lord at all times. Thus, the sage's curse turned out to be a great blessing for Indradyumna, which in due course of time helped him earn the liberation in the form of Sarupya Mukti. Dagdhambodehe madhyabhajitrikute Dagdhambodehe madhyabhajitrikute Kridachaile yudavoyam vasamihi sarvajantu Atyavartitta shaktya Tadbhaktanam putrana utkarsharava Sarvajantu Atyavartitta shaktya Tadbhaktanam putrana utkarsharava Dagdambodhehe madhyabhajit trikute Kridachaile yutapoyam vashabihi Sarvan jantun Atyavartishta shaktya Tadbhaktanam kutrana utkarshalabha. That Gajendra, the lordly elephant, which was the leader of many herds, not one herd of elephants, but many herds of elephants, sported with many cow elephants in the Trikuta mountain in the midst of the Milky Ocean, in keeping with the tradition of the king of elephants. He excelled all other animals in unmatched physical strength. The reason for this is not for to seek, O Guruvayurappa, Greatness and glory of your devotees manifest wherever they find themselves born or happen to be. The poet feels that being a devotee himself, though afflicted by sickness, he would also be blessed by the Lord with excellence in devotion and health.
स्वेनस्तेम्ना दिव्यदेशत्वशक्त्या स्वेनस्तेम्ना दिव्यदेशत्वशक्त्या सोऽयं केदान् अप्रजानन् कदाचित् शैलप्रान्ते धर्मतान्तः सरस्याम्यूतैः सार्धं सार्धं तत्प्रणुन्न अभिरेमे.
स्वेनस्तेम्ना दिव्य देशत्व शक्त्या सोयम खेदान अप्रजानन कदाचित शैलप्रान्ते घर्मदान्तः सरस्याम यूतैः सार्धं त्वत्प्रणुन्नः अभिरेमे. In fact, with regard to this raga Divyamani, Leela Ganachuchi by Saint Tyagaraja is the only known kriti in this rare Medakarta raga known as Divyamani. Although those who attempt this song in the modern times have called it as Dundubi raga. Dundubi raga is a Janya raga of Divyamani. I gave this background so that the youngsters who watch this video as well as youngsters who attend the regular satsangam who are curious about music and who are learners of music will have some background of this raga. The elephant sportingly spent the days without facing any of the usual difficulties of life normally faced by animals or human beings. His own strength and the divine excellence of the region that he inhabited aided the elephant in this manner of trouble-free existence. However, one day in the midst of a hot summer, tired from wandering on the slopes of the mountain Malaya, he sought relief in a lotus pool belonging to Varuna and amused himself in the lake with other elephants. O Lord, it is you who prompted the king Indradyumna to go to that lake so that an opportunity is created to enhance his devotion, dispassion, and knowledge, and to give him sarupyam with no further delay as the time for the king elephant's vimochanam was nearing. The agent of deliverance was a Gandarva, who by name, residing in the same lake as a crocodile, whose story will come in the next lokam.
तावद्देवलस्यापि सपत् ग्राहीभूतः तज्ज्वले वर्तमान जग्राहैनं हस्तिनो पाददेशे शान्त्यत्तो हि शान्तिदोषि स्वकानां जग्राहैनं हस्तिनं पाददेशे शान्त्यत्तो हि शान्तिदोषि स्वकानां
तावत् देवलस्यापि शापात् ग्राहीभूतः तज्जले वर्तमानः जग्राहैनं हस्तिनं पाददेशे शान्त्यर्थं हि Shrantidosi Swakanam. Once a Gandarva by name Hu was sporting in a lake with his female attendants. At that time, sage Devala came to the lake for the observance of his rituals. Hu, submerged, mistaking the sage to be one of his own maids, pulled his feet from under the water in a playful manner. But he was unaware that it was Devala sage. But angered by this, the sage got so enraged and cursed the Gandarva to become a crocodile. That crocodile happened to be living for eons in the very same lake where our elephant king Gajendra came with his herd to rest and play. The elephant was caught by the leg by the previously mentioned crocodile while enjoying in the cool waters of the lake along with his herd. Why such a disaster should happen to the elephant, a great devotee of the Lord Supreme? Will the Lord forsake his dear devotees at any time? The poet, setting aside such doubts, says that the ever merciful Lord himself inflicts sufferings on his devotees when they go a little bit astray and indulge in worldly pleasures, only to direct them back to their ultimate spiritual pursuit and welfare so that he could absorb them. These sufferings are for enhancing their devotion, dispassion, and knowledge so as to reach the ultimate goal. The poet implies a parallel here between his own suffering and that of the elephant. He says, "O Guruvayurappa, you created that situation for the elephant king in order to lift him from this useless mundane world. Similarly, you also must have given me this bodily suffering and affliction only for cleansing myself to get prepared to reach you sooner than later. Kindly protect me from this disease just as you did in the case of the afflicted elephant king."
त्वत्सेवाया वैभवादुर्निरोधो त्वत्सेवाया वैभवादुर्निरोधं विध्यन्तं तौ पत्सरणं सहस्रं प्राप्ते काले त्वत्पदैक एकाग्रसिद्ध्यै नग्नाक्रान्तम् अस्तिवर्यं व्यधात्वो नक्राक्रान्तम् अस्तिवर्यं व्यधात्वम्
त्वत्सेवाया वैभवात् दुर्निरोधम् युध्यन्तं तं वत्सराणां सहस्रं प्राप्ते काले त्वत्पद एकाग्र्य सिद्धे नक्राक्रान्तं हस्यवर्यं यदास्त्वम्. The majestic elephant's devotion to you and the great austerities practiced in his previous life as King Indradyumna had endowed him with great power and glory. These qualities made him invincible in his 1,000 years of conflict with the crocodile. He had thought that he could extricate himself from the jaws of the crocodile by his own power of strength in all those struggles. But when his strength finally failed and he realized and reached a stage where he might be compelled to give up fighting on his own and maybe succumbing to the crocodile, the thought of the Supreme Almighty completely dawned in his mind, and that is when he realized that he is powerless and pleaded to the Lord Supreme. In short, when the time for his redemption arrived, and when you deemed him fit for single-minded devotion to your lotus feet, O Bhagavan, you caused him to be subdued by the crocodile, thereby making Gajendra look to you completely.
आर्तिव्यक्तप्राक्तनज्ञानभक्तिः शुण्डोक्षिप्तै पुण्डरीकै समर्चन् आर्तिव्यक्तप्राक्तनज्ञानभक्तिः शुण्डोक्षिप्तैः पुण्डरीकै समर्चन् पूर्वाभ्यक्तं निर्विशेषात्मनिष्ठं स्तोत्रं श्रेष्ठं स अन्वगादीत् स्तोत्रं श्रेष्ठं स अन्वगादीत् परात्मा.
आर्तिव्यक्त प्राक्तन ज्ञान भक्ति शुंडोक्षिप्तैः पुंडरीकैः समर्चन् पूर्वाभ्यस्तं निर्विशेषात्मनिष्ठं स्तोत्रं श्रेष्ठं सो अन्वगादीत् परात्मन्. In spite of his best efforts, the elephant could not extricate himself from the grip of the crocodile's powerful jaws. Finally, through the stress of intense suffering, his devotion and knowledge acquired in his previous birth resurfaced completely and came to the forefront. And he realized that what had held him for so long was no ordinary creature, and that he should get freedom only through the grace of the Supreme Almighty, not by his power, because he felt that he was powerless then. Because of this great realization, O Lord, he began to worship you by offering white lotus flowers plucked by his trunk from the lake. Even though he was held captive by the crocodile, he used his trunk to pluck all the lotus flowers floating around and then offered it to you. He also chanted a great hymn discoursing on the attributeless Brahman or Atman. O Lord of Guruvayur, since you are attributeless, it is you that Gajendra worshipped with great devotion. This is how Bhattadiri completes that slokam.
Shrutvā stotram nirgunat निर्गुणत्वं समत्वं श्रुत्वा स्तोत्रं निर्गुणत्वं समत्वं ब्रह्मेशादीनागमित्यप्रयाते सर्वात्मा त्वं भूरि कारुण्यवेगात् ताक्ष्यारूढः प्रेषितो भूः पुरत्तः
श्रुत्वा स्तोत्रम निर्गुणस्थम समस्तं ब्रह्मेशाद्यैः नागनित्य प्रयाते सर्वात्मातं भूरि कारुण्य वेगात् ताक्ष्यारूढः प्रेक्षितो भूः पुरस्तात्. Bhattacharya says Gajendra's entire praise was directed towards Nirguna Brahman, that is Brahman without attributes, referring to Bhagavan devoid of any particular form. Therefore, gods like Brahma and Shiva, who identified themselves with their respective distinct forms given by the Supreme, that I am Brahma, I am Rudra, and the like, did not feel like responding or did not respond, as they felt that the elephant was not addressing them and it was addressed to Brahma. But you, O Guru Ayyappa, who are the soul of all beings, moved by your boundless mercy, swiftly proceeded on your Mount Garuda and appeared before Gajendra. Being the indweller of all living beings, you did not consider yourself different from that attributeless Brahman to whom the prayer was addressed. There is also nothing surprising in that you, who are indeed truly the imperceptible Nishkala Brahman, made yourself perceptible to the external eyes of Gajendra. Is it not well known that the all-merciful, attributeless Bhagavan assumes forms with attributes in order to protect his devotees time and again?
हस्तीन्द्रं त्वं हस्तपद्मेन धृत्वा चक्रेण त्वं नक्रवर्यं व्यधारीः हस्तीन्द्रं त्वं हस्तपद्मेन धृत्वा चक्रेण त्वं नक्रवर्यं व्यधारीः गन्धर्वेऽस्मिन् मुक्तचापे सहस्ती त्वत्सारूप्यं प्राप्यते दीप्यते स्म गन्धर्वेऽस्मिन् मुक्तशापे सहस्ती त्वत्सारूप्यं प्राप्यते दीप्यते स्म प्राप्यते दीप्यते स्म.
हस्तीन्द्रं तं हस्तपद्मेन धृत्वा चक्रेण त्वं नक्रवर्यं व्यधारीः गन्धर्वेऽस्मिन् मुक्तशापे स हस्ती त्वत्सारूप्यं प्राप्य देदीप्यते स्म. Oh Bhagavane, after that you pulled out the elephant king from the lake with your lotus hand and cut asunder the powerful crocodile with a stroke of your discus, Sudarshana. Thus the Gandarva who had become a crocodile due to sage Devala's curse earlier, was released from it, and he too attained his original Gandarva form after thousands and thousands of years of languishing like a crocodile. King Indradyumna, who had become an elephant on account of sage Agastya's curse, was also released from it, and he attained the Sarupya form of salvation. I explained about Sarupya form and the characteristics. Gajendra shone forth lustrously, having been endowed with a divine form that was identical to yours, with 4 hands holding conch, discus, mace, and lotus, clad in yellow cloth, pitambaram, and a garland hanging down to the knees, that is Vanamala, in the background of the blue hue of his body reminding one of the dark rain-bearing clouds, the Kaustubha pearl shone in all its splendor.
एतद्वृत्तं त्वां च मां च प्रगेयो एतद्वृत्तं त्वां च मां च प्रगेयो गायेत् सोऽयं भूयसे श्रेयसे स्यात् इत्युक्त्वैनं तेन सार्धं गतस्त्वो दिश्यो विष्णोपायि वातालये च इत्युक्त्वैनं तेन सार्धं गतस्त्वं विष्णो पाहि वातालयेश पाहि वातालयेश
एतत् वृत्तं त्वां च मां च प्रगेयो गायेत् सोऽयं भूयसे श्रेयसे स्यात् इत्युक्त्वैनं तेन सार्धं गतस्त्वं धिष्ण्यं विष्णो पाहि वातालयेश. In a form of benediction to the world, Bhagavane, you told Indradyumna, whoever praises me and you concurrently at dawn with the recital of your episode will surely be blessed with more and more auspicious things and finally be liberated to reach me like you. So saying, you took Indradyumna to Vaikuntha-loka. Gajendra Moksham is usually celebrated on the first full moon day in the Chaitra Masam or Chaitra month, which comes between April and May. Gajendra Stuti that I just now talked about is in Srimad Bhagavatam Canto 8, Chapter 3, Slokas 2 to 29. The collection of 28 slokams is exquisite that great acharyas recommend Parayanam of these slokas when someone is in extreme anxiety and inexplicable pain and suffering for total relief. Let me give you some samples of this stuti, just the slokas 2, 3, 4 and 5.
Om Namo Bhagavate Tasmai Yate Tatchidatmakam Purushaya Adibijaya Parayishaya Abhidimaye Yasminnidam Yadaschedam Yenedam Yaidam Swayam Yosmat Parasmatcha Parastam Prapadye Swayam Bhuvu Yasvatmanidam Nigamaya Yarpitam Kvachit Vibhatam Kvachatatirohitam Aviddadrikshakshubhayam tadikshate Sa Atmamulo Avatumam Paratparaha Kalena Panchatvamitešu Kritnaso Lokeshu Baleshu Cha Sarvayetushu Tamattadasit Gaganam Gabiram Yastasya Pare Abhivirajate Vibhu Abhivirajate Vibhu.
Om Namo Bhagavate Tasmai Yatetat Chidatmakam Purushaya Adibijaya Parayishaya Abhidimahi Yasminnidam Yadaschedam Yenedam Yaidam Swayam Yosmad Paramasya Parastam Prapadye Swayambhuvam Yasvatmanidam Nijamaya Yarpitam Kvachit Vibatam Kvachatat Tirohitam Avidrike Sakshubhayam Tadikshate Sa Atma Mulovatu Mam Paratpara Kalena Panchatvam Iteshu Krishno Lokeshu Paleshu Sarvahetushu Tamastadasid Gahanam Gabiram Yastasya Parehe Abhivirajate Vibhuhu. Let me give you the meaning of only these slokas, which are very relevant to the context here in the words of Gajendra. Gajendra said, O cosmic excellence, I offer my respectful obeisance unto the Supreme Purusha. Because of him, this material body acts due to the presence of spirit and is therefore the root cause of everyone. He is worshipped by even such exalted persons as Brahma and Shiva, and he has entered the heart of every living being. Let me meditate upon him. The Supreme Purusha is the exalted platform on which everything rests, the ingredient by which everything has been produced, and the person who was created and is the only cause of this cosmic manifestation. Nonetheless, he is different from the cause and the result. I surrender unto him, the Supreme Brahman, who is self-sufficient in everything. You may remember, Krishna said in Bhagavad Gita chapter 9, Maya tadamidam sarvam jagat avyakta murtina matsani sarvabhutani nachaham teshu avastitaha. That actually reflects what Gajendra talked about just now in Sloka 3. The Supreme Brahman, by expanding his own energy, keeps this cosmic manifestation visible and again sometimes renders it invisible. He is both the supreme cause and the supreme result. And he is the observer and the witness in all circumstances, Thus, he is transcendental to beyond everything. May that Supreme Being give me protection. In due course of time, when all the causative and effective manifestations of the universe, including the planets and their directors and maintainers, are totally dissolved, there is a situation of dense darkness in Naimittika Pralaya or Mahapralaya. Above this darkness, however, is the Supreme Brahman forever existent. I take shelter of his lotus feet and unto that Brahman. To sum up, the final sloka which I now quoted, Kalena Panchatvam Iteshu Kritsno Lokeshu Paleshu Sarvahetushu. To highlight this sloka, if you may recollect, Krishna said in Bhagavad Gita chapter 8, sloka 9, Kavim Puranam Anusasitaram Anoraniyamsam Anusmaredyaha Sarvasya Dhataram Achintarupam Adityavarnam Tamasapparastat. One should meditate upon the Supreme Brahman as the one who knows everything, as he who is the oldest, who is the controller, who is smaller than the smallest, who is the maintainer of everything, who is beyond all material conception, who is inconceivable, yet who is always present as a person. He is luminous like the sun, and he is transcendental beyond his material nature. So that the devotees are not confused, Lord Krishna said to Arjuna in chapter 9 again, Ananya chintayanto mam yejana paryupasate tesham nityabhiyuktanam yogakshemam vahamyam. There are those who always think of me and engage in exclusive devotion to me. To them, whose minds are always absorbed in me totally, I provide what they lack and preserve what they already possess.
एवं गजेन्द्रम् अपवर्णित निर्विशेषो ब्रह्मदयो विविधलिङ्गविदाभिमानाः एवं गजेन्द्रम् अपवर्णित निर्विशेषो ब्रह्मादयो विविधलिङ्गविदा अभिमानाः नैते यदा उपससृतुः निर्खिलात्मकत्वात् तत्र किल अमरमयो हरिराविरासीत् अमरमयो हरि आविरासीत्.
Evam Gajendram Apavarnita Nirvishesham Brahmadayo Vivida Lingabhida Abhimanaha Naite Yada Upasasrupuhu Nirkila Atmakatvat Tatrakila Amaramayo Hariravi Rasit. Sukabrahmam continues to Maharaja Parikshit. O Maharaja, when the king of the elephants was describing the supreme authority without mentioning any particular person, he did not invoke any other gods headed by Lord Shiva or Lord Brahma or the other devatas like Indra, Chandra and the like. However, Brahman appears as Lord Hari and as the super soul Purushottama, the Parabrahman, he appeared before Gajendra. This episode reminds me of my childhood. Pushing back to memories dated some 70 years ago. As I mentioned in another context or pravachanam, my mother was my foremost acharya, like for most of you. And the earliest introduction for me to spirituality was through Puranic stories to entice me and pack me with more food for lunch or dinner. My earliest recollection is Gajendra Rakshanam, and that is how my mother titled it, and not as Gajendra Moksham. I asked many questions which appeared silly to me years down the line, but my mother never ignored any one of them when I questioned her when I was so young, and tried her best to convince me or to be convinced, and hence her beckoning me later in her life as Kapila as I was growing. Many of those childish questions, which I learned later that many scholars had already raised and learned from their acharyas, gave beautiful and philosophical responses to them, like my mother explaining in simple terms. So there are a number of questions that come from Gajendra Rakshanam. Let me summarize those questions and quickly here try to answer them. Why did the croc, hoo-hoo, catch only Gajendra's foot while there were a bevy of his wives, children, and parivaram of Gajendra surrounding Gajendra? Why did he pick only Gajendra's foot? Any weakling could have been easily picked. That is what crocs normally do. They attack the weakling, not the strong ones. This was easy to answer. Both the hero and the villain knew their past dedication to Bhagavan, hence were motivated to be relieved of their karma or curses through this process of apparent confrontation between them, so that both of them would be salvaged at the same time. That is the reason for who picking Gajendra, knowing full well that Gajendra had extraordinary might. Second question, why did Gajendra struggle for 1,000 long years and only after that shout out for help from the Supreme Brahman if he was already aware of his bhakti to the Lord because of the special powers he possessed about his prior birth, and that the Lord should be approached while in peril? He could have avoided all the pain and suffering, including wasted efforts to struggle for 1,000 years. The answer for this also is not difficult. Whether it is Gajendra or Brahma or Indra or a host of other powerful gods, and of course most if not all of the mankind, that we often forget that it is Bhagavan who is the universal protector and savior, but we all assume credit for successes where none is due us. Only when the person, whether a demigod or mortals like us, realize that our efforts thus far have become futile and then they are rendered powerless, then all the scales fall down and humble the sufferer so that he or she approaches the Supreme. Third question. We also think that our spouse, parents, siblings, children or friends can save us without the slightest realization that oru jeevanukku oru jeevan tanjam alla. One frail mortal cannot provide refuge to another from the sea of samsara, as they are all in a leaky boat that is waiting to sink. When that realization came in unto Gajendra, he realized that no one other than Bhagavan himself can save him, and hence did not expect the huge horde of elephants, his attendants and his female elephants and everyone else surrounding him, to come to his rescue. The same thing happened 1,000 times in many yugas, and there were only exceptions such as Dhruva or Prahlada, of course Draupadi, are some examples. God waited for their shouts or confession of helplessness. In every case, Bhagavan was waiting for them to be called. That is when the ego is totally effaced or erased. And that is when Bhagavan takes over. Fourth question. Why then Bhagavan, who is responsible for saving us, always waits for that last moment of lament from his subjects, letting his bhaktas struggle and suffer for eons in this process? The answer for this came much later in my life when I was reading Nyasa Dasakam. Nigamanda Desikan answered this question very clearly in his Nyasa Dasakam. Aham madrakshana bharo madrakshana phalam tada. Namama shripatereva ityatmanam nikshiped buddhaha. Surrender the responsibility for our protection to Bhagavan, which is bhara samarpanam. Whatever benefit happens out of that is also surrendered to Bhagavan, and we have no part in either of that. That is called phala samarpanam. That the Lord protects only those who apply to him and cry for his help is further confirmed by the Lakshmi Tantra found in the Skanda Purana section 9 under category Vasudeva Mahatmya in Vaishnava Kanda. Apraptitona gopaye iti tad prarthanamatihi. Gopata ita bhavet evam gotrupta varanam smrtam. The specific request to the Lord to save us, known as Gotrupta Varanam, is one of the essential elements of Sharanagati, without which the Lord will not protect us. Having waited that long, why did God become so impatient? After all, he waited for 1,000 years for the call from Gajendra. But Puranas say Bhagavan was becoming very impatient the minute Gajendra called him Adi Mulame, and said to have kicked Garuda so hard, thinking that Garuda was slow in running to the spot to rescue Gajendra, that it caused the spurs of Garuda's wings wither from the body. Such was the powerful kick by Bhagavan when he mounted Garuda. Twadangri Sammartha Kinanka Shobhina is a very famous statement. An hour or two on top of 1,000 years, do they make a difference? Yes, God cannot afford to delay his compassion. Once a devotee has summoned him or called him, he has to come in that nanosecond rushing for his help. As Swami Desikan says, Patu Pranatarakshanyam Vilambam Masahaniva Sada Panchayude Bibrat Sanaha Shiranganayaka. Bhagavan is always waiting, fully equipped to rush at moment's notice like a fire engine. Last question. Why not send Sudarshana Chakram or any of his Ayudas to take care of the situation? Sudarshana could have easily handled. They can do the task super fast and efficiently and cut the head of the crocodile, and Gajendra could have been rescued. Why should Lord himself personally rush so much in a hurry, kicking Garuda and rushing now? A devotee asked Vaikunthavasi Mukkur, Sri Lakshmi Narasimhacharya Swami, the same question, for which the great Acharya used to recount the story of a rich man who kept asking the same above question and was dissatisfied with all reasonable answers that Lakshmi Narasimhacharya Swami was able to give to the devotee. To teach him a lesson, the rich man's friend who was listening to the Acharya and who was watching all this, and Narasimhacharya Swami, unable to convince his rich man friend, came running to him one day and announced to this devotee of Swami that the man's son had fallen into a well. Dismayed at the news and in total panic, the rich man dropped whatever he was doing and rushed out to the well, only to find the news to be false. Then he reprimanded his friend for having given him false information or having misled him. The friend smiled but retorted, "Hey, even though you have an army of efficient servants, hundreds of them waiting, more powerful than you to go and rescue your son, did you think for a minute of sending any one of them to rescue the boy? They could have done faster than you. They could have approached the scene much sooner than you. If this is the depth of your attachment towards your boy that made you run to the scene without even thinking or beckoning somebody's help, just consider the urgency of Bhagavan, who is the universal father, how he might have felt for freeing Gajendra or any of his bhakta in peril." இந்த அற்புதமான புராணத்தை ஆழ்வார்கள் எப்படி உருகி உருகி வர்ணித்தார்கள் என்பதை கொஞ்சம் பார்ப்போம். Just a few examples only here.
பெண்ணுலம் சடையினானும் பிரமனும் உன்னை காண்பான் எண்ணிலா ஊழி ஊழி தவம் செய்தார் வெள்கி நிற்ப விண்ணுளார் வியப்ப வந்து ஆனைக்கு அன்று அருளைந்த கண்ணுரா உன்னை என்னோ களைகள கருதுமாறேயே. பெண்ணுலம் சடையினானும் பிரமனும் உன்னை காண்பான் எண்ணிலா ஊழி ஊழி தவம் செய்தார் வெள்கி நிற்ப பெண்ணுளார் வியப்ப வந்து ஆனைக்கன்றருளை இந்த கண்ணுரா உன்னை என்னோ களைகள கருதுமாறே களைகள கருதுமாறே.
Gandarva says that while exalted souls like Shiva and Brahma languish without a sight of the Supreme Brahman, despite unrelenting penance for ages, a mere elephant could make him come running to its rescue by the sheer strength of the elephant's devotion. This is Thondaradi. And in Periya Tirumozhi, of course, Thirumangai comes with a much more powerful statement here. மீனமர் பொய்கை நாள்மலர் கொய்வான் வெட்கையினோடு சென்று இழிந்த கானமர் வேழம் கையெடுத்து அலற கரா அதன் காலினை கதுவ ஆனையின் துயரம் தீரப் புள்ளூர்ந்து சென்று நின்று ஆழிதொட்டானை தேனமர் சோலை மாடமாமையினை திருவல்லிக்கேணி கண்டேனே.
மீனமர் பொய்கை நாள்மலர் கொய்வான் வேட்கையினோடு சென்று இழிந்த மீனமர் பொய்கை நாள் மலர் கொய்வான் வேட்கையினோடு சென்றிருந்த கானமர் வேழம் கையெடுத்தலர கராகன் காவினை கருவ ஆனையின் துயரோ தீரப்புள்ளூடு சென்று நின்று ஆழி தொட்டானை தேனவர் சோலை மடமாமயிலை திருவல்லிக்கேணி கண்டேனே ஆனையின் துயரம் தீர புள்ளூர்ந்து சென்று நின்று ஆழி தொட்டானை தேனவர் சோலை மாடம் மாமயிலை திருவல்லிக்கேணி கண்டேனே திருவல்லிக்கேணி கண்டேனே.
In Periya Thirumozhi, it is the second canto, the third subchapter, and the ninth is Arpasuram. Desirous of plucking fresh lotus flower for worship, the wild elephant devotee entered the fish pond, then raised his trunk and sent out a tumultuous bellow when his leg fell into the jaws of a crocodile. To rid the elephant of his distress, the Lord rode his Garuda, arrived on the scene, and wielded his discus. ஆனையின் துயரம் தீர புல் ஊர்ந்து சென்று நின்ற ஆழி தொட்டானை. He lives in Mailai mansion amid nectar dripping groves. I have seen him in திருவல்லிக்கேணி. தேனமர் சோலை மாட மாமயிலை திருவல்லிக்கேணி கண்டேனே.
துப்புடையாரை அடைவதெல்லாம் சோர்விடத்து துணையாவரென்றே. துப்புடையாரை அடைவதெல்லாம் சோர்விடத்து துணையாவரென்றே. ஒப்பிலேனாயிலும் நின்றடைந்தேன். ஒப்பிலேனாயிலும் நின்றடைந்தேன். ஆனைக்கு நீ அருள் செய்தமையால் ஒப்பிலேனாயிலும் நின்றடைந்தேன். ஆனைக்கு நீ அருள் செய்தமையால் ஈப்பனை வந்து நலியும் போது அங்கேதும் நான் உன்னை நினைக்க மாட்டேன். அப்போதைக்கு இப்போதே சொல்லி வைத்தேன் அரங்கத்தரவணை பள்ளியானே. அப்போதைக்கு இப்போதே சொல்லி வைத்தேன் அரங்கத்தரவணை பள்ளியானே. அரங்கத்து அரவணை பள்ளியானே.
கடைசியாக பெரியாழ்வாரின் திருமொழி 4ஆம் பத்தில் 3ஆம் திருமொழி மிகவும் முக்கியமானது. பெரியாழ்வார் says something very special based on the Gajendra episode. துப்புடையாரை அடைவதெல்லாம் சோர்விடத்து துணையாவர் என்றே ஒப்பிலேனாகிலும் நின்னடைந்தேன். ஆனைக்கு நீ அருள் செய்தமையால் எய்ப்பு என்னை வந்து நலியும் போது அங்கேதும் நான் உன்னை நினைக்க மாட்டேன். அப்போதைக்கு இப்போதே சொல்லி வைத்தேன் அரங்கத்தரவணை பள்ளியவனை. Alvar says, in Gajendra's case, he was able to shout and cry and bring you down. But who knows? I may be totally incapacitated. I can't even open my mouth and cry. O Lord of Srirangam, reclining on the serpent bed, highly placed ones are so fortunate or cultivated so as to avail of your help whenever they need. I am unworthy. That Anai or Gajendra may have been very worthy and he was able to beckon you. But I beseech you because you did save elephant Gajendra in distress. But when he called you. But when death throws its snares over me, I will not be able to remember you in any way. This, therefore, right here is my prayer. Put it in the bank account. I am making it well in advance when I am capable and able to. Kindly hold it in account for me and remember forever. So when I am suffering, I may not even call you, but you should come and protect me. எய்ப்பு என்னை வந்து நலியும் போது அங்கேதும் நான் உன்னை நினைக்க மாட்டேன். அப்போதைக்கு இப்போதே சொல்லி வைத்தேன் அரங்கத்தரவணை பள்ளியானே. Mundakopanishad says, Mundaka is embedded in Atharva Veda, I explained it earlier. Nayamatma pravachanena labhyona medaya na bahuna shrutena yame vaishe vurnate tena labhyastasyaisha atma vivrunate tanum swam. Atman cannot be attained by dint of study or intelligence or much hearing or by Shravanam. Whom he wishes to attain, by that it can be attained. To him, this Atman reveals its true nature. Quite often I get to answer, although it is on one-on-one, asked one almost similar scriptural question in varying versions or orientation. Let me explain that situation very quickly. About Vedas, Upanishad, Brahmana, and Vedanta. For those who know all of these, most of you in this regular satsangam are aware of all these nomenclature. You may ignore this explanation I am giving you. But those who may have forgotten or curious here, some simple explanation may help. Vedas are Shruti texts. They are only conveyed from one to the other by recitation. Vedas are Shruti. In other words, Shrutistu Vedo Vijñeyaha, that which are heard. Know that Vedas are Shruti. God willing, on another occasion, I'll go a bit elaborate as to Shruti, Anshruti, and other auxiliary details. Dharmam jignasamananam pramanam paramam shrutihi. For Vedas, I gave you the quote, Shrutistu Vedo Vijñeyaha, that which are heard. Smruti is Dharmam jignasamananam pramanam paramam shrutihi. To those who seek the knowledge of the sacred law, the supreme authority is the revealed text or revelation, namely, those which are from Shruti are revealed in Smriti. Sayanacharya in his commentaries on Rigveda said that Mantra Brahmanatmako Veda, that means mantra, mantram, and Brahmanatmaka combined are considered as Veda. Here, mantra refers to Samhita. Samhita would mean united, joined, union, put together. And Brahmanatmaka refers to Brahmana Grantham. So Vedas are comprised of Samhita and Brahmana Grantha. The end part of Brahmana Grantha is Aranyaka, and the end part of Aranyaka is Upanishad. Only one, Isha Upanishad, is the last chapter of Shukla Yajur Veda Samhita. So Vedas are subclassified into Samhita, Brahmana, Aranyaka, and Upanishad. Upanishads are also referred as Vedanta as the last parts of Veda, Veda Anta. Upanishads are very important source in the philosophy of Vedanta and known as Shruti Prasthana or Upadesha Prasthana or Prasthana Trayi. There is no particular sequence order of reading Vedas, but Rigveda are considered oldest and important Veda. You can start reading anyone from the 4 Vedas for at least a peripheral knowledge. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Narayanaya. Om Guruvayurappa.
Narayana 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 Hari